sure. I'm a FERPA HIPAA kind of gal, so. Okay, so
I mean, that's
so I'll introduce. So I think, well, you know me and Mary Luciana, but Luciana was in the Twin Moms Club, 2 sets of twins, but now they're like real age kids. So it doesn't. Now it's more like you just have 4 kids, right? Not like when you had like twin toddlers and twin toddlers or preschoolers or whatever.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like once they hit age 5,
Yeah.
things change in terms of like independence and like just what they could do and what my attention level could be reduced. Like, I think that's the biggest way to explain it. Like as a twin mom, your attention level is hyper focused from the time that they're born, and then you can slowly reduce the amount of attention that you give and in that high alert state. Now it's like we just have a lot of kids that are all the same age. That's all it is.
All right. So so my twins are twin boys. They're 7.5. They're going into 2nd grade. Anna's here. I'll admit her. Taryn, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself? Just I want Luciana to know kind of what age everybody's kiddos are, because we do have quite a range here today. I'm going to go ahead and stop my video to try and allow max bandwidth for everybody.
Yeah, say hi. My name is Taryn. My kiddos will be 14 months tomorrow, and I have boy-girl twins.
Okay, so you must have been one of the ones that filled out the survey, because you were like, yes, okay, so I remember yours, because I went according to like, I answered the questions according to age and what people asked. So good.
Okay, yep, 14 months.
Got it. Nice to meet you. Virtually.
Nice to meet you.
Nice. And let's go ahead and have Brooke. Would you like to introduce yourself and what age are the kiddos? Oh.
So Brooke is not a twin mom, but she is my friend, and she has little ones, and she has one on the way.
We can't hear you though, Brooke. I don't show that you're muted, but check to make sure that the sound on your actual computer is turned on, or your phone, or whatever, if you're on your phone.
I can't hear her. Can you guys hear her?
No. Maybe just try with the buttons on the side of your phone, turning the volume up. Or possibly we have like a defect with Zoom and iPhones. I mean, who knows? That's always a thing. Okay. Let's go ahead and have, while she's figuring that out, Mary, do you want to introduce yourself and go over kiddos' ages again? Because I swear I forget even over like 2 months.
Hi, I'm Mary, and I already know Luciana, but my twins are 9 years old, and I have 2 girls who are 6 and 4. Yeah, is there anything else I was supposed to say?
I think that's good.
Okay, that's it.
And Anna, oh, okay.
I was in the waiting room. That's what I just heard.
Hi, I am Anna, and I have 2 5-year-olds, Sarah and Emily, and we also have a praying mantis. I don't think I can find it. It's somewhere, right there, somewhere. Aww. Anyways, so I'm outside, and sometimes sometimes I don't get very good reception. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But thank you, Luciana, for doing this.
Of course. I feel like the more information people have, then the better choices that they can make and relate it to their own life. That's about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. And I was saying, like, my concept of time is really weird anymore, but I think when you last did this for our club, it was probably like 4 years ago or something, because my boys were like 2 and 3. So things have changed.
Well, and you just, yeah, like, you know, me personally, things definitely evolve in like my nutrition education and just the more practice teaching and coaching and applying it to my own children that I do, the more I'm like, oh, this is proven to be really important, or this is less important. So just like, yeah, a lot has definitely changed in some areas of what I've taught and how I teach it from that point in time. But it's constantly evolving, as it should be. Like, no industry should be stagnant. You should always be trying to continue to learn and evolve. That's how things move forward. That's where progress happens. So, for sure.
All right. So go ahead and, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the workshop.
Okay. So my name is Luciana. I was a teacher for about 15, 20 years. I taught physical education, weightlifting, nutrition. I coached a lot of sports, and all of that transpired because I had such a positive experience as a collegiate athlete. I really came into my own confidence as a person when I played sports. I became much more aware of my body, how to take care of it in positive ways, how it became to use it as an instrument and view it as something that I could adventure through life with, and how eating supported those adventures. At the same time, I also grew up in a family that revered food. I'm 100% Italian, and I grew up cooking pasta and pizza from scratch, and my family made eating an experience. It was something we did to be connected to each other, to celebrate our culture. It wasn't about nutrition. It wasn't about eating as many vegetables as you could. It was about celebrating each other, being with each other, preparing the food, growing the food, and it was an experience. And so merging the science of nutrition and how people can use it to feel how they want to feel with the culture that I experienced and how I was brought up to food is really important to me. Pasta is the reason I teach nutrition. It's not to help people lose weight generally or change their size. It's to help them form their own values around food and fitness, and then practice living those values. And understanding what information we get that's harmful, and understanding what information we can take and use as wisdom to create self-awareness and habits that will sustain us for our lives and for our children's lives. And we can have the food experience that we want moving forward. And so after the second set of twins, I had my first set when I was still teaching. I went back to teaching. After the second set of twins, I stayed home because it was like, who's going to raise this litter? Okay, I'll do it. And it was, I decided that I loved working, because I do love working. I love my subject. I love talking about it. I love hearing people's thoughts about it and what they're discovering. And so I just continue to do it in groups or in workshops or one-on-one. That's how I continue to teach now. I merge parenting with working in a way that works for our family. And when it needs to change and evolve, I look at ways to do that. But I love the subject. I love the idea of connecting people to themselves and the things that matter to them when it comes to food, health, and fitness, because I think that's where the future of the industry is. It's not in people telling other people what to do. It's in, no, you're going to discover it for yourself. This is how you do that, and this is how you take the information and move forward. And then build children, or cultivate in children habits that allow them to feel how they want to feel and use food in ways that are positive. So I hope that makes sense. If not, we'll talk about it more. The way that the webinar is designed, or the way that I put stuff together, is very, very informal. So I'll go through a little bit of information. You can ask questions at any time. I encourage conversation. I encourage self-reflection. You can write down anything. A lot of the information that I share comes from a woman named Ellyn Satter. So it's her research, it's her information through her years of teaching it. And then I have merged it with information that just I've developed and that I've found to be true within my own family. It's meant to be used as a buffet, literally. Take the things that resonate with you personally, with the things that you're like, oh, I would like to try that, or I believe I could do that in our life, in our families. And then the goal is to build upon it. Don't take anything that I say as 100%. I must do it, and if I don't do it, I'm failing. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to take what resonates with you, and if you don't have values or ideas about food yet, to start to cultivate them, and then build on them with you and your family. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, Luciana, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you type the name of the person in the chat? I couldn't quite understand how to spell her name. The name of the person you said this is based on?
Oh, absolutely. And you'll
Thank
see her
you.
name in the, let me see, how do I do that? Where is my little,
The chat is at the bottom, but I'll type it in because I am.
sorry, I'm just trying to move my little
Thank
Zoom
you.
box up.
Emily typed it. Thank
I
you.
typed it in.
Oh, yes, it's Ellyn Satter.
Thank you.
Yeah, she's close. Okay. Emily, Emily, you tell me when you're ready for me to share my screen and I can jump right in.
You should be able to share, I hope. So for me, it's at the bottom. I don't know. I have a Mac. Every computer's a little different, but there's a little like green button that says share screen.
Okay, I'm going to press it. What do you want to share? My desktop. Okay. Let me see. Okay, let me see. Let me get to it. Okay. Can everybody, oops, sorry, this is sensitive. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
I
Okay,
can see
cool.
it.
Yay! All right. So here's kind of an idea about where I'm going with all this and what I felt like the most important things were. These are the things that I feel like you can expect to learn. What healthy eating really means, because people have a wide range of spectrum of ideas about healthy eating and what it means when it comes to kids. What your job as a parent is, or what your job as the person feeding the kids is, because you're not, the parent is not often the only person feeding kids. What your kids' jobs or responsibilities are, because the parent has jobs and the kid has jobs. The stage of development that your child is in and how it relates to how they're feeding, how they're responding to food, and how they're eating, because they are connected. What matters most and how to do it. And that's all related to the division of responsibility by Ellyn Satter, which we'll go into. And then how to cultivate healthy habits in your kids. Okay. Okay, before I go into the actual information, let's see if I can do this. Okay. It's really important that the mindset that you go into this with is one that is non-judgmental and non-blaming towards yourself. So I come from the mindset that everyone is doing the best job that they can based on the information they've had up to this point, their life experiences, and what they've come through. Okay? So you're not like effing your kid up if you're not eating vegetables, or if you are eating a lot of fast food, or if your plates don't look like what you see on social media. And I think that's a really important thing to say right now. Like, you're not effing up your kid, first of all. Second of all, your ability to be a good parent, or your worth as a parent, is not defined by how well your kids eat. It's not defined by what they weigh, what the shape of their body is, how they act around food, how they behave around food. They are in the process of learning, and that is not supposed to look perfect, as in they get it right all the time. They always know the right thing to do. We have expectations as adults and parents that are most of the time unrealistic of our children when it comes to food and eating and feeding. And part of today is being aware of the expectations that you may have that need to be adjusted or pulled back or examined, okay? Even when it's not going how you want it to go, you're not doing it wrong. It's actually hard, okay? Whenever you get any information today that you're like, holy crap, that I was effing that up, don't think that. Don't think that at all. You got to think like, okay, like I'm learning, this is hard, and I have more information and I can make different choices moving forward, or I can make the same choices with a different mindset moving forward. Everyone is doing the best they can. That changes daily according to what's going on in your life as the person feeding, because there are days where I'm stressed or I'm frustrated and I don't want to deal with feeding people. and I don't do the same things. So don't compare what you're doing to what someone else is doing, and give yourself grace on a daily basis in terms of be compassionate towards yourself as often as possible in the choices that you're making and how you're feeding your children. You don't always have full context for what's really happening with anyone else, and keep that in mind. And then again, this is a buffet. Use it as a buffet. Take what resonates with you, that you feel connected to, or you feel interested by, or you feel you could apply in your life, and disregard the rest of it, okay? All right. So I'm gonna put some notes up on my screen just to help me remember to stay on track. I'm gonna do this. Can you guys can't see the notes, can you? So Emily, can you guys just see the slide, or can you see the notes that I put up too?
I can see the notes, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Well, I'll do my best then. Let me see. The notes are just to help me remember what to say, but all right, so I'll put them down and then I'll pop them back up. Okay, so here's what healthy eating means to me as a result of 20 years of teaching nutrition, raising my own children, working with people one-on-one in nutrition settings as a coach. And it has definitely evolved, because to me, healthy at the beginning of my career meant looking a very specific way. It meant eating as little fat as possible, eating as little sugar as possible. I very much associated a narrow view of food and how much I should be eating, what I shouldn't be eating, with health. And after reading books like Health at Every Size, Beauty Sick, a lot of Ellyn Satter's work, a lot of Linda Bacon's work, I have really expanded my view of what healthy means and changed it to mean these things. And there are a lot of people who are now also changing their views of what healthy means. And that's why this is what I have listed here. So we each bring our own ideas of health to the table, and obviously to our parenting. With our kids, we want to be able to cultivate them being connected to their bodies as much as possible, because they already know how to eat, okay? So healthy, a person who understands how to eat in a healthy way understands what it feels like when they're full. They understand what it feels like when they're hungry. They understand that when they are super, super tired, that's gonna change how their hunger and fullness shows up in their body. They're gonna understand that more activity, more movement is gonna change their hunger levels. So it is cultivating connection with our bodies, self-awareness. It's bringing in anything having to do with our culture or things specific to our race or our ethnicity that we connect to. That's a part of it also. For me, being Italian and all the food and all the rituals that come with being Italian, I love. That is a huge part of the reason I choose to eat the way I do, and I think it's a healthy thing. Pleasure and enjoyment and appreciation of what you have and how you're eating should absolutely be part of how you view food and how you cultivate food in your family. That to me is a healthy whole person approach. It's not just about calories in and calories out, okay? Another definition, or continued expanded definition of healthy eating, is being able to foster trust and confidence between the child and their own body cues. They already have this, they're born with it. We as adults train them out of it based on our beliefs. And we're going to talk about that more. And then encouraging the natural pattern of growth intended for that child. The medical profession is not often trained in specifics of nutrition. So my pediatrician, for example, early on, I asked her, as I was doing like all this research and as I was like trying to figure out how to feed my kids, I asked her, I said, you know, you guys have a lot of posters up in here about nutrition and recommendations. Do you have any actual specific nutrition training? She's like, no, we take one class in nutrition and it's very general and we don't do anything else. I said, so where do you make recommendations based off of like this? She's like, basically whatever the leading government organizations, the medical organizations send us at that time. And I thought, oh man, like these are the same organizations that promote like BMI and like encourage parents to base their child's health off percentage of body fat. So it's something to keep in mind, because the best indicator of your child's health when it comes to growth is if the pattern is continuing and constant. So if your child is in the 98th percentile, it doesn't mean they're overweight. If your child is in the 3rd percentile, it doesn't mean they're underweight. What you would do is you would look at that child's growth over time. Do they stay in the 98th percentile the whole time? That's consistent growth. That's fine. Your kid may just be in a body that's a bigger body and growing and eating according to that body. Okay? It doesn't mean they're unhealthy if they're in the high percentile. If the thing that you want to look at is big divergences in their growth patterns. And that's something not a lot of pediatricians know how to look at accurately, or more importantly, know how to read and communicate information about. So that's why I put that in there, because healthy eating is directly tied to a child's growth pattern. If they have a consistent, stable growth pattern over time, that means they're eating in a way that's working for their body, even if they're in a higher or lower percentile than what the doctor is comfortable with or what you're comfortable with as a parent. Oops, sorry. Okay. Are there any questions about that part right there? Or does anybody have any thoughts? Okay. I cannot see the chat box, so if you put something in the chat.
Sorry, Luciana, it took me a second to mute.
Okay.
I don't really have any like useful comments, but like I've been to this workshop maybe 3 times, and every time it really helps me to hear you talk about like the mindset and the cultural aspects. So I just wanted to tell you that, because I know you don't get as much feedback when we're not actually in the room.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, I am one person's point of view. So keep that in mind also. These things make a difference. I believe in people's real lives because nobody exists in a bubble. So that's why I share things like that. Okay, do you guys, is there like noise in the background of me that's making it hard to hear, or are you guys okay?
No, you're actually really clear right now.
Okay, good. Okay, moving on to the next slide. These are the goals for kids. This is how I make every single decision about how I feed my kids and what I feed them, right here with these goals in mind. Number 1, autonomy. Autonomy basically just says I want my kid to be able to make their own decisions about food, form their choice, make their choices from a place of being connected to what they value in food, in health, in fitness, and it's not governed by what I think they should be doing. Like that's the goal for all people, autonomy, making your own choices according to what matters most to you and doing that as often as possible. Second goal, develop positive attitudes toward eating and food, which seems like a no-brainer, but can really change how teenage girls, teenage boys experience the body image pressure that comes once they are aware of it. So like if you have a positive attitude toward eating and toward food, it changes how you deal with the pressure to look a certain way, to go on a diet. It changes how you view diet culture in general. And that to me is a really powerful weapon and lens to give kids, okay? Develop skills that support your mental, physical, emotional health over time. So it's not just about teaching kids how to eat when they're hungry and stop when they're full. It's giving them a foundation so that they can continue to build skills as they get older that can be adjusted and tweaked according to them personally, the things they value, their culture, how active they are, things they find interesting, all of that. Okay, so it's really building skills that kids, that will support a whole person, not just you eat this, you use these much calories, you get to be a smaller person, a bigger person. It's like that's way too binary and too simplistic. We want skills that support them as a whole person. And food and practicing eating, there are so many avenues to do this. Other goals are appreciation and awareness for food, preparation of it, where it comes from, how it fits into our lives overall. And that's a really big one too, in terms of health, like knowing where food fits in your priorities of taking care of yourself. Like, is it more important than sleep for you? Is it more important than exercising for you? Is it how do all those pieces fit together? Because it can be very easy to scroll through social media, be told that you're not disciplined enough, you're not eating the right foods, and that's why you feel the way that you do and you look the way that you do. And being able to filter all that information and prioritize no is also part of it. Like knowing what matters and what doesn't is really important. And then cultures and traditions. What are the cultures and traditions that you connect with within your own family, from your own ancestors, from the people that you grew up with that matter to you? That's all part of it. If there's important things that the lineage of your family did in relation to food that can feed who they are as a person in a positive way, not just literally, but also like mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, those things are absolutely something that should be included. And it's figuring that out for yourself and your family. There are so many cultures that food has rituals around and traditions, like Native Americans and African Americans and Italians and Portuguese. Like I have met very few people and had very few food experiences where there wasn't culture and tradition and the connectivity tied into the process of eating. Like it's just something that we get away from because we focus more on like the calorie part, or we should be eating this foods. Like, no, it's a much bigger picture, much bigger questions we should be asking. Okay. All right. So I always like to do scenarios in these webinars because I want people to be thinking about like the choices that you are making and what you are doing. Just to kind of think through things. So here's the scenario. For the past few days, your 15-month-old is at the table during a family meal and only wants to eat the bread on the table. If you don't serve bread at your table, I would equate this to a food you know your child really, really likes, and they're only choosing to eat that one thing on the table. On the table. There's some fruit, there's a meat, there may be a veggie, but they're focused on only eating the bread or that one thing. Up until now, they've been eating every type of food without much fuss. But lately, they've been refusing foods that they used to like, and it's making you as the parent frustrated. What would you normally do in this situation? There's no wrong answer. There's no bad answer. Okay. So I'm curious. I'm curious. And this is part of like thinking through and talking about things that you would do in these situations.
So I'll give it a try. This is Taryn. I have the 14-month-olds, so I'm not quite there yet, but what I've kind of been doing in this situation is like, I try to eat when they eat. And so I would try the fruit, meat, or veggies myself. Like, oh, this is so good. Would you like to try some? And maybe like offer it to them, showing them that I'm eating it.
Okay, good. I like it. I like the idea of you modeling what eating different foods looks like. Absolutely. Yeah. That's a very powerful thing. I like that you said eating together, because that's a really big deal also. It can be very tempting to, especially when you have little kids, you have multiples, to feed them and not eat at the same time because it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
so,
it is.
Oh, really? And it takes more energy and it takes your focus away from just feeding them. So two things you said that I do think are good are eating together and having them see you try the different things. Good. Anybody else want to throw in what they would do?
I'll go, because I will say, like, in the past, we were definitely like, no, you need to have a bite of the fruit and a bite of the vegetable before you have more bread. And like, we're definitely moving toward more of the approach now where I'm like, that's fine. Everything's out family style, whatever. It's fine, because I don't know. It's like less pressure and all that. And I will say that like both of my kids have been picky in some ways, but one in particular, like since they were 15 months old. So really, like, one stopped eating meat at 15 months and he He doesn't. Well, he makes an exception for bacon, but yeah, we would definitely have been like, have a bite of everything on your plate. And but now I'm just kind of like, I do notice that like if he does just eat 3 biscuits at dinner, you know, he's like hungry the next morning. So I'll point that out to him. I will say like, why do you think you're so hungry this morning? And he'll be like, because I only ate biscuits last night. And I'm like, maybe we should, you know, maybe have a little bit of fruit and stuff tonight too, but not like punitively, but I will say like, why do you think you're so hungry this morning? You know?
Yeah.
Emily,
I
and you
mean-
said yours are 7.5, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
7.5. So I mean, literally the one that I would say is a lot pickier started that pickiness at 15 months. Like I can
Wow.
pinpoint the night he refused meat for the first time, and it has not changed. He didn't grow out of it.
So one thing to mention about the pickiness factor is that it's both developmental with the age that this kid is for the 15 months, and it carries over for a long time. So kids are literally constantly exploring the things that they like and don't like. You got to remember, like, just because they taste something one time doesn't mean that they like it and they know in that moment. Think of us as adults. We don't always know in the moment that we love something, that we want to keep eating or want to keep doing it. It takes multiple exposures. Add to that developmentally that kids at this age are literally figuring out how to be alive. like really, they're figuring out, I want more independence, but I don't have enough skills to be independent. So I still need my mom, but I don't want to be told what to do. I want to eat what I want to eat, but I don't even know what that is because I don't even know all the things that are out there. I want the opportunity to eat as much as I want, but I don't really know what that is because I'm still learning how to feel hunger and fullness in my own body. And now I got this person telling me I have to bite all these things and taste all these things. Whoa. Okay, so it's part developmental and it's part layering and learning of skills. So you're not doing anything wrong. The most important thing you could do is adjust your expectations. Our expectations as parents of what our kids should eat, how much they should eat, how frequently they should be eating are really off most of the time because we don't understand their bodies. They have smaller tummies. They're still learning. It's not that they're picky, it's that they are still trying to figure it out in real time. And as they get older, you factor in that they're trying to please you because now they've figured out you're the person that supplies everything in their life. I better make this person happy. I better do what they want. And where you get into trouble is where at the 15-month age, your child is not concerned about pleasing you as much as they are as when you get to the toddler stage. The toddler stage is where you have a really good opportunity to help a kid believe that they're going to be safe, that they're going to be able to foster eating in a way that works for them and that you're not going to pressure them. And so specifically for the 15-month-old, you need to remember they're in this stage of life where they're pushing boundaries because they're trying to figure out who they are. Okay. Second, continue to offer them food from what's on the table, but not in a pressure way. So say, hey, we have all these different things on the table. If you feel like trying something else today, that would be awesome. If your tummy feels good, just eating that, mom and dad are okay with that, or whoever's at the table, like, we're okay with that. You have to make a child feel actually safe, that they can say no to something, that they can eat whatever they want that's on the table in front of them without the fear of repercussion. Because if a child feels like you're not actually telling the truth, that you're gonna make them eat a vegetable or they're not gonna get something else, or you're gonna make them eat fruits, they automatically stop tuning in to their own hunger, their own preferences, and building their own skills, and they switch to, what do I have to do to please the people at the table so they'll be nice to me? And that's once that happens and they shift to pleasing other people, it's very hard to get them back because they've already internalized that what I want and what I feel is not as important as what these people want me to do. Continue to ask them how their tummy feels to check in for hunger. So I've done a couple different ways. With our kids, at the beginning, I would use hand measurement. So I would hold my hands far apart to ask them, like, are you this hungry? Or I would hold my hands really close together to ask them, are you this hungry? And it would help them tune into, I don't know, well, how does your tummy feel? If you talk about how their tummy feels, they come to understand and put words to the fact that hunger comes from my tummy. It doesn't come from me seeing food. It doesn't come from me smelling food. It doesn't come from anything else. It doesn't come when I'm sad and somebody gives me a popsicle to try to help me feel better. It doesn't come from emotions or comfort. It comes from hunger first. And so asking them, you know, how's your tummy? Is it a little bit hungry? Is it a lot hungry? That helps them gauge and put words with, yeah, I would like more, or no, I wouldn't. Reinforced behavior you want at the table. So every family has a different way of interacting at the table. And if you want kids to enjoy food and have a good time eating, then you got to be good company. Like, it can't just be all about like, eat your vegetables, try everything on the table, clean your plate, because that's not a fun environment. Like, eating together should be something that is nourishing for your child as a person, for their emotions, and for you also. Like, if you could go an entire meal and not talk about anything your kid was eating, imagine how free your child would feel. Like, that's like, really, because think about every time, if you showed up to the table, and every time you showed up to the table, somebody was telling you how much you should be eating, what you should be trying, making a comment about how much you'd already eaten. Like, it would feel like eating is not fun, like it's not enjoyable. And part of it is having connection to the people that you're eating with and relaxing. When you relax, you allow yourself to feel and experience the food differently. You taste it differently. You savor it differently. You can feel when you're full easier because you're relaxed, and your brain can actually get the messages from your stomach. People who eat in a high state of tension or concern or speed or worry, they never have those experiences. They never fully connect to their bodies. So reinforcing the conversation, how you want to be with other people when you're eating, and being good company is something that will help them build good nutrition habits as they grow. And then if they choose to only eat that one thing, remind them when their next snack or meal is. Like, hey, like, these are the things that are available for breakfast today. If you're going to choose just to eat bread, that's okay. We're cool with it. But understand that you're not going to get any more food until the next snack. Like, there's not going to be, you know, you don't get to get down from the table and eat in 10 minutes. And this is something I've had to reinforce with my own children since we've been out of school, because we had very set, structured meal times and snack times when school was in session. As soon as school gets out of session and there's Zoom meetings and there's homework and mom's trying to work and dad's trying to work, mealtime got thrown way the hell off. So even though like this is something that I teach, there are still real life things that happen that make me have to reevaluate and restructure and try different things and remind my children and myself, like, oh no, these are our foundations. These are our basics, and the basics work. We just have to return to them and remind ourselves of them sometimes. Are there any questions about this part or comments, or does anyone else want to offer anything, any thoughts?
I have a kind of reinforcement on the behavior or modeling what you're wanting to see at the table. Again, mine are 14 months, but I'm constantly, okay, I need to put my phone down. We're eating right now. I don't need to be on my phone. I can be on my phone when they're at nap time. Like, so I constantly aware of my attachment to my phone, and that I do that when I'm eating as just a de-stressor, right? I'm flipping through and I'm eating at the same time. But if they're seeing me do that, they're going to want to do that as well.
Okay. That is such a really, really good point. Not only are they going to associate that with like mom's not giving us her total attention, which you're not required to give your kids your total attention all the time. But if you're going to pick specific times, mealtime is an important one. Yeah. Second of all, distracted eating is a huge thing with adults. So like lots of adults that I work with, they're like, I don't know why I can't feel hunger or fullness. And ultimately, when they sit down, it's because they're not actually paying attention to it. They are scrolling through their phone, or they're eating in front of a computer, or they're eating while driving, or they're reading something. And I'm a huge reader, but if it takes away from my ability to experience food and the people that I'm with, then I know that it's not good. Like it's hindering more than it's helping. So eating without distractions, especially when you're eating with your kids or when you're with family, is so important because of exactly what you said. It models it, but it also shows that mom's paying attention to how her tummy and how her body feels when she's eating also. Mom's enjoying being here with you. I don't need something else to pay attention to. And it puts a lot of pressure on moms, not because most of the time, I shouldn't even say moms, but it does put pressure if you're the only one feeding all the time. Because I remember meal times being a time when I would just like a break also. And if scrolling through social media is your break, then I would say give yourself a set amount of time, not at mealtime, when you can, even if it's just in the bathroom for 5 minutes, and go do it and try to help, but just try to make the mealtime time for the people that you're with as much as possible, without any kind of distraction. Good point. Really good point.
So on the same like token, we have a final snack time. So we do a dinner.
Okay.
Like at 4:00, because they wake up from their nap at 3:30ish, 4:00. They're hungry. So I've worked we have a 4 p.m. dinner time for you. And then we do a later snack before we do baths and bedtime and whatnot. Well, that last snack, we're kind of just in the mode of, well, you're gonna watch the 30 minutes that you do have of screen time. I put on something for them, but they're eating while they're watching it, and you already see zoning out. Like they're not even looking at what they're eating; they're just watching and then just shoveling food in their mouth. So at the same time, like I do that though. Like I try and watch my devices, but I let them watch a 30-minute show and eat at the same time. So I don't know that that's the best way to kind of start it, but it gives me 30 minutes to make dinner for my wife and I.
Okay. And
so I don't know.
No, that's totally fine. So listen, here's what I would say. I would say if the screen time that you're giving them is their time that you can make yourself dinner for the two of you, take out the snack. Or
no
say,
snack. Okay.
Just say, hey, if you guys want your snack, sit down and eat your snack right here. And if your wife is there, is she available to sit and like watch them while you cook?
So not always. So most times she's on her way home. I'm getting dinner ready so that when she is home, we can eat.
That makes sense.
Before we go do bath and bedtime.
So is the snack something that they have been asking for out of hunger, or is it something that you started to help them stay occupied while they're watching the TV or watching their show?
Well, it's transitioning from, they used to have a bottle at that time. Now it's more, they seem to still be hungry. So I'm still giving it to them, but then it's just also, well, I can distract them also at the same time. So it kind of extends the eating portion into a little bit more so that I can maybe prep food or do something in the kitchen.
I would say try to separate the two.
Okay.
If you can, like try putting them in front of their show, put them there, but don't give them the snack, and see if they notice that they don't have it. If they ask for the snack, then I would say, okay, well, you guys can sit and eat your snack for a few minutes, but we're not going to watch the show while we do it, and tell them, like, talk about it with them. Say it's just really important for you to feel if you're actually hungry, and then focus on one thing at a time. And even though you're like, I'm not sure if their kids are going to get that, it's how you talk to kids about food from the very beginning that they begin to internalize their own messages about it. So it's really good self-awareness on your part that you noticed that they totally zone out and don't pay attention to how much they're eating, because that's what happens pretty much. We focus on the one thing and we totally lose track of what we're doing. And that throws off their hunger signals for the next morning, because now they may have eaten more than what they would have eaten if they were paying attention and just said, oh, you know what? I don't really want that much, Mom. I'm good. So really good self-awareness on your part though. And try separating them and see what happens. And then
Shauna and Taryn, can I offer a suggestion?
Yeah.
So Taryn, one thing I was thinking about is if you're making dinner for yourself and your wife, but you may, as the kids get a little bit older, maybe start transitioning to having them kind of join you at dinner, because their bedtime is going to probably shift a little bit later or whatever. Like eventually they'll probably be eating the same dinner as the rest of the family. And so like maybe they're not ready for that right now, but maybe they could eat carrot sticks, or 14-month-olds probably aren't eating carrot sticks, but maybe they could have a couple Ritz crackers while you guys are eating your regular dinner, and that kind of mindless snack can shift into like a light family dinner.
Yeah.
Time. Like you could, as a goal, like start seeing it that way. I don't know, maybe you guys eat a lot later and then that wouldn't work. But
it's just hard because it's not consistent. Our dinner time is because when we get home, so sometimes I eat dinner by myself and then Roxanne will eat later, or we'll both eat later, like once they're down and it's 8 o'clock. So it's just hard because it's not at a consistent time, our dinner time. So that's why I'm like, well, at least you guys do get a dinner at 4 because that's known.
Which is good. I think that's good that you have a structured dinner time for them. Do you usually sit down with them, or do you just prepare the food and then give it to them?
No, I usually am sitting with them. It's just a matter of I'm not always eating that meal with them. Breakfast and lunch, I eat with them because it's just us here at home.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
No,
I
think that's a good suggestion by Mary. If as they get older and your work schedule or her work schedule and dinner time becomes maybe an earlier time or a more structured time where you can all sit down, that's a good suggestion. Until that happens, I would say just try separating the two activities. And see if you notice the difference.
And I was going to add, Taryn, this is Emily, because my boys, they went to bed really early at that age, and so we would do the same thing. We would like cook after they went to bed because it was nice. But then like we gradually kind of moved it back, and so for a long time we ate dinner like right at 5 o'clock. I mean, it's different because my husband is home at that time because we're teachers, but But, and then eventually that moved back to 5:30, and now it's more like 5:45, 6 o'clock, but also like, because yours are at that age where they're just really getting into having like the actual meals of the solid foods and all that. So you'll also find at some point, like meals will become bigger, they'll become more like meals, and then it should naturally move to more like 5 o'clock, 5:30, or like mine, just because we're roughly kind of the same eating schedule. Like they have their snack around 3 o'clock, and then like I said, we eat like somewhere between 5:30 and 6, and then there's no snacking after that. They go to bed at 7:30, but you will find that like they eat more at some point. They eat more like regular meals, and yours are still in that age where they're not quite like on full solid like real meals, I think.
Oh, we're there. They're eating anything and everything that they get solid. And so it's just a matter of the snacks are becoming bigger. So I think I need to make the meals bigger, the actual meals bigger versus the snack size.
That's good.
Because they're just eating all day.
That's good. That is a good recognition of the fact that, okay, their meals need to be a little bit more substantial so that they stay fuller longer. Because a snack is basically just a small meal. So yeah, if they are eating and you can tell that they're eating more at the snack time, then the meal before that snack time would absolutely, you either expand the options in terms of types of food. That way there's a little bit more protein, there's a little bit more carbohydrates, there's a little bit more something starchy, like whatever. We want to increase the amount of food that they're eating so that they are able to feel full for a little bit longer amount of time. That's good awareness also.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing I want to remind everybody of also. Every single one of us are born knowing how to regulate ourselves when it comes to food and eating. Kids come into the world knowing how to do this. That's why they, hop off the boob or the bottle when they're done, and they let you know when they're hungry. So the most basic signals of hunger and fullness, we already know, we already all have. We are either taught to foster those feelings and build upon them, or we're taught to pay attention to something else when we eat. So your job as a parent is to provide structure, meaning you decide when the meal times and snack times work in your family according to your family's schedule, your kids' needs, and who's supporting them. You provide the support. And this is, when I say support, I mean as neutral and non-judgmental support as possible when it comes to food. You provide opportunities for them to eat and to develop skills, and you practice trusting your child that they know their own body better than you do. And that's probably the biggest challenge for every parent. I can't tell you how many times in my own family, my mom would tell my sister, you're not eating enough. You need to eat more, because she was smaller. Or she'd tell my bigger sister, oh, you need to eat less. There's no way you're that hungry. When you say things like that to kids, you teach them to question what they're doing. You teach them to scrutinize or distrust how they've been making choices around food. And that can be harmful. So these are your jobs: provide structure, provide neutral, non-judgmental support, provide opportunities for them to practice and develop these skills without being shamed or judged if it doesn't turn out the way we expect it to as the adult who's there, and practice trusting your child. Okay, this looks like, these are our kids. We have 10-year-old, this is not when they're 10, but we have 10-year-olds now and 7-year-olds. And so one of the things I did with my kids was we have upside down dinner or upside down breakfast, which is where we literally eat under the table. We eat dessert first, and then we eat the meal. And the purpose of doing that is literally because I want them to have no rules around food. I don't want them to think that when you sit down at the table, you have to eat the veggies, and then you have to eat the fruit, and then you have to eat the meat, and then you can have dessert. You can earn your dessert by eating all these other foods, because food doesn't have value. It doesn't have moral value. Like, one isn't more valuable or worthy than the other. Do they have varying nutrient levels? Absolutely. But that doesn't make them better or superior. It just means they give your body different things. And it changes how kids experience and enjoy those foods when you present them in ways that are fun and neutral. So this was an under the table dinner that we were doing. So this looks like choosing and preparing food, which doesn't mean that it has to be home cooked. Like, it is possible to integrate fast food into part of your eating if that's what's available to you and that's what's easiest to you. Regular meals and snacks. And again, you decide what regular meals and snacks looks like in your house based on what's doable for you, your family, and your kids. Regular meals and snacks for us look like a breakfast that I normally eat with the kids, or my husband and I eat with the kids because we haven't been at school. When it was during school time, it was the kids sitting down and eating together, and me usually eating in the vicinity but not sitting with them. And my husband didn't eat breakfast here, he would eat at school. We have a breakfast, we have lunch, we have a mid-afternoon snack, and then we have dessert. And then we have dinner. And those are ours. They have evolved because my kids obviously are not like infants anymore or toddlers. When we had younger children, I felt like I was feeding people all the time, no lie. It was breakfast, it was snack, it was lunch, it was snack, it was dinner, it was snack. And then it was breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner. And so it definitely evolves and changes, okay? Make mealtimes pleasant and fun. Again, I can't stress how your children experience food and the experience of eating together makes such a difference as they grow. Model mealtime behavior and food skills and habits. So one thing I definitely say is that everything is a skill that can be learned. So like feeling hunger, if you don't feel it now as an adult, it just means that at some point you were trained out of it, that you were made to believe that you needed to please the people around you, or maybe you didn't have food readily available. So every time you ate way past the point of fullness because you didn't know when you were going to eat next. Like, children who experience food scarcity or people who don't have food readily available should never talk about nutrition, because that's not what's most important. If a child knows they're going to be fed consistently, then they can start to really relax and develop skills and recognize those things as skills. Adults who have never had that opportunity doesn't mean they won't be able to learn it. It just means they need to feel safe first, and then they can practice feeling these things and developing those skills. So everything is a skill that can be learned. You have to be able to have safety first in order to know that, or to develop these things. Do not let children graze between meals, which again is kind of a hard one for parents. Grazing depletes your child's ability to feel real hunger. And it teaches them that I can go eat whenever I want, and I don't really ever feel hunger or feel fullness. The structure of meals and snacks helps children delineate between I'm hungry and I eat a meal and now I feel full, and I'm kind of hungry, kind of full, kind of full, kind of full. We want them to have a natural cycle of hunger and fullness, okay? And then you weave values into these experiences as often as inspired to do so. And I'm going to talk about values just a little bit. Okay, so I talk about health, fitness, and food values a lot with families, because if you know what your values are, the things that matter most to you, you can include those things in your children's eating experiences. For me personally, my biggest values are self-awareness. So understanding myself so that I can make choices when it comes to food and movement and stress and sleep and rest and recovery that support how I want to feel. Consistency is a big one for me also. Adventure is huge with me with food. I want my children to be able to try and respect different types of food in all different types of situations. So I live in Livingston, and Livingston is a really rich cultural community. We have Filipino people, we have Hispanic people, we have indigenous Mexican people from different tribes in Mexico. We have East Indian people from the region of Punjab. We have different types of Indian people from different areas of India. So like I grew up around incredibly diverse food. And I took my kids to the Sikh temple as part, because a lot of my students were Sikh, and I knew that at the Sikh temple, they would get a different spiritual experience, but they would also get a food experience, because when you go to a Sikh service, they feed everybody. They feed hundreds of people. They feed them breakfast, you go to the service, and then they feed hundreds of people lunch. And it's completely different food than anything my kids have been exposed to before. And I wanted them to get in the habit of trying it, being able to say, I do like it and I'd like some more, or I don't like it, no thank you, or I'd like some more. And so me having the opportunity to do things like that is how I practice my food value. And you have those opportunities within your own house also. These are some of the values that I talk about with families or individuals, just to give you an idea. You're not required to choose from this list, but the main point of this slide is for you to kind of think back on your past eating experience and how you were raised to view and eat food. What were the things you enjoyed? What things do you wish you would have learned or known that you don't? And what would you like your children to remember or know experience when it comes to food and eating? Because you're literally building their food values by how you're eating and how they're experiencing eating in your family right now, which is kind of cool, because you can literally create just the most amazing experience and view of food and eating and what it means to you personally and your family and your culture. That's incredible to me. Like, that's just so powerful. So I wanted to, does anybody have any questions about this or thoughts about this? Okay.
Luciana?
Yeah.
So I try not to put pressure on people at the table to eat a specific type of food because it's quote unquote better. But we do talk about, like, just in a friendly way about, like, oh, this is broccoli. It's like a whole food and it's got so many micronutrients. See how much color it has? Those are healthy chemicals for your body. You know, because my kids are kind of sciencey, and so we take that angle of like why one might choose like whole grain bread versus like white flour, but we still eat tons of stuff with white flour, and that's cool, you know, like cookies not a whole food, but we still eat it. But I don't know, am I giving my kid a complex, or is this what you're talking about, like about values, or just like respecting the different types of things we get from different types of food? I don't know. What do you think?
I think that's a good question. So my question back to you would be, what is the intent of sharing that information? Because if your intent is strictly neutral information, because your kids are sciencey and that's how they think, I think you're fine. Do you do the same things when you eat something like ice cream? Do you do the same things with things that have a lot of fat or sugar? Because if the intent is strictly information, providing information and connecting to your kids in a language that they speak or have shown interest in, I think it's cool. If your intent is to show that these foods are more valuable because of the things that they have in them, that's when I would say, either choose not to talk about it in that way or choose to talk about all the food. Does that make sense?
I definitely feel like we talk about all the food and that there's a place for all food. But I mean, I do, as like an intentional teaching, want them to have like a little bit more reason to choose fruits and vegetables. You know what I mean? Like I, as an adult, might rather eat cake all day, but I'm like, oh, salad makes my body feel better. And like, I know it has all these nutrients in it and it's something that I've acquired a taste for. And I feel like valuing fruits and vegetables is something that I wouldn't mind passing on. I don't want to give them a complex, but like, why would they want to eat bitter kale if?
Well, it's okay.
You know what I mean?
Oh, that's such a great. Why would anyone eat bitter kale? So, okay, so a couple things here. When you say you would want to eat cake all day, would you really want to eat cake all day? Like, if you were given the option to just eat cake all day, do you honestly think that you couldn't eat cake, or that you would do that? Because that sounds like I would rather do that. Does that make sense? I don't actually think you would want to eat cake all day.
I wouldn't, but I, as a person, like in my eating behavior, I do actively choose like to try and get more vegetables in my life. Like I don't want to count calories in my life. I don't want to count macros, but like, I'm like, you know what? I should be eating more vegetables than I might naturally get in my everyday. And then once I do that, I feel better. I feel like it fuels my body better, but it wouldn't, like I naturally probably wouldn't eat as many vegetables, or I might choose to eat more like pre-prepared foods that have a lot of high sodium. Like I am making nutritional choices in my life.
Okay.
That I don't know. I mean, and I get what you're saying about like not putting good food, bad food values on the kids. And so I wanted to talk that through with you. But is it bad to talk about like why vegetables are great?
No, so like it's not as simple as a question as is it good or bad. It's honestly, it's more of a nuanced, like, what's my intent with sharing the information, honestly. And it sounds to me like providing a wide range of foods is something that you do value, and making sure that your children get and understand which foods are going to allow them to feel best in their bodies is also a value, because you mentioned saying, or that you notice that you feel better when you do eat more fruits and vegetables, which makes sense. Everybody's bodies work differently. I would just caution you at trying to sway them or manipulate them to eat more of those things instead of letting them explore what mixture of foods helps them feel their best. That's the mixture of foods that helps you feel your best. You know that because you've experimented with that, and it sounds like that's a good food experiment, like trying different amounts of foods, trying different amounts of veggies, trying different amounts of carbohydrates, trying different amounts of meat. That's awesome. Those food experiments are great for people to do with the intention of becoming more aware. The only caution I would say again is just your children need to be able to explore those things for themselves also, not do it because they know that mom does it and because that's what she values. And does that make sense?
It does. And like my body runs really well on dairy, but like one of my sons has figured out that just he's almost dairy free at this point, just by personal choice, because it just doesn't work for him. And it's never worked for him. Even when he was breastfeeding, his body didn't like dairy when I ate it. So yeah, I'm hoping that we're leaving that open.
I feel like you are
figure that out.
Yeah, if you're talking about all the foods how they help us feel or what we notice feeling like. Another thing would just be like talking about them. What do you notice like you feel like when you eat this food? Like, how does it feel in your mouth? What does it taste like? How does it feel in your tummy? Do you notice, how it feels later as you're like, running around? Like if you eat a big bowl of pasta and then, you go run around, how does it feel to do that? Like having them be aware of how food affects how they feel in their body is also a good thing. I'm not opposed to talking about that at all. I would always just caution and say, like, what's the intent? What's the motivating factor behind it? That's what I think just needs examining for all of us. Like I absolutely used to be like, no, you have to eat your vegetables or you're not going to get that. And then I realized that was harmful. And I was like, oh, that's not what I'm trying to create. My husband, I had a whole different like challenge with, because he believed that. He grew up in the Clean Plate Club. He grew up in don't waste food. And so we had very different ways of dealing with food and talking about food. So I think you're a self-aware enough person that you do speak intentionally and you do try to do things that are best for your kids. And I think if you continue to do that and just be aware, that they'll be okay. That's a good question, Mary.
I have
Thank
a
you.
question kind of along those lines. Oh, wow. And my video magically came back on. So my husband is diabetic, and not like type 2 diabetic, but apparently that can be genetic as well, because he's 6'5" and 180 pounds and like no other health problems. So like, and then it turns out like everybody on his mom's side is type 2 diabetic, and we didn't know that. So like there is concern with our kids and sugar, and that they're more I'm not super concerned. I have low blood sugar. I have the opposite problem. Our pediatrician said diabetes in kids like doesn't get tested before age 10 because it doesn't really show up. But there is concern that like they have such a preference for the sugary food, and that could, like, how do we educate them on sugar knowing that it could be like a problem later?
So when you say educate, are you trying to make them aware of maybe their propensity to react differently?
Yeah, like when they pick a snack out of the cupboard, like one of them will pick like a thing of fruit snacks and like canned fruit, and he'll want something else. And I'll just be like, have like one of those, and then let's do like a real fruit, because canned fruit actually like just has sugar and like no fat. Like it's better to just eat the actual mandarin orange. It's a little healthier. So I'm saying no, but I'm like, we're not gonna like triple down. Like we need to pick one thing that's not sugary for the snack. And I don't know if that's
So I would say like with the diabetes thing, I don't know if type 2 diabetes is genetic or not. I know type 1 is.
Yeah.
I'm not educated enough in the area of that specifically.
Yeah.
I would say continue to read research about it. And if it is genetic, I would continue to just be aware of your children's reactions to those types of food. Have they shown any kind of reaction in terms of like changes in how they feel or how they talk about how they feel as a result of eating different amounts of sugar or sugar in different forms? Because I think you should be child-led in this area. And awareness, when I talk about creating awareness in kids, it's helping them create awareness mostly of how they feel and how they notice certain foods make them feel. So the sugar question is always an interesting question, because people think that sugar causes kids' behavior to change by the amounts that they eat it, when that's not actually it. Kids will eat something sugary and then they'll be hungry really, really quickly, usually after that. And the change in behavior is a result of the hunger. It's not a result of the sugar. And I think there's confusion there. So
Yeah, that's a good point. I would say ours, like, they don't seem to have behavior, and actually, like, we have quite the opposite problem with hunger. It's like if they eat something sugary, I mean, they will literally, like, they'll go over to my mom's, and my mom doesn't know anything about nutritional snacks, but whatever, it's free babysitting, right? And so like if
Okay.
they have like at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, which is a little late, like a handful of Oreos, they will not eat dinner. Straight up, like none, like not one bite of dinner. And it is so frustrating and so unpleasant. And like they don't get that hunger after. It's like when they have something sugary, they just no need for a meal anymore.
Well, I mean, the Oreos too, you have probably like a higher fat content.
Yeah, that's
Fat content also, so they're full because of the fat, not usually because of the sugar.
okay.
Things that are just high in sugar but low in fat are going to let them feel hunger really quickly. But that combination of sugar and fat absolutely would probably, have them want to skip a meal because they're not hungry. How often does that happen though?
Couple times a week.
So like 2 times
so
a week?
Like, no, the refusing dinner, that's not like as often, because I've been
Okay.
talk to my mom about like when the snack time is, and I'm like, it's fine if you give them Oreos, just like, can you give some fruit along with it so that the snack is not just like, I don't know,
You know, and I would say you don't even have to do that. Like if you're gonna give her if they're gonna have the Oreos, just have them at a different time so that it doesn't ruin their dinner. Like align their snack time to when you would give them snacks at home.
Yeah.
I don't even think you have to change the snack. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, because if your concern is that they're not eating dinner, and it sounds like you're concerned that they're missing out on the nutrients of dinner in favor of the sugary snack, you don't have to remove the snack. You just have to adjust the time that you're giving it to them so that they have enough time to feel hunger again.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because like one thing we do is if there is gonna be, I mean, we don't have like a lot of sweets in our house, again, because my husband's diabetic, so we just like don't keep a lot of stuff. But like on the occasions that we do have something, a cupcake or whatever, we tend to do it at the afternoon snack rather than as like dessert, because we do see like with meals where there's going to be dessert, like at holidays, like they just won't eat anything in anticipation of the dessert. And that's fine every once in a while. We don't want it to be regular. So like that has worked really well for us. Like if they do have sugary stuff, like they bring home from school or whatever, to do it as like afternoon snack.
Yeah, and I would say including regular sweets or fatty or sugary foods, it should be something that families do if they can afford it, and if that's within their beliefs and their values. Simply because it takes like the specialness out of it, and it teaches them that food is neutral, food is equal. Like when we make it something that's a special treat, we elevate that type of food above all others. That's why they don't eat anything during dinner and wait to get to that, because it's something they're not going to get that often. If you get it frequently, it becomes less special. It becomes just something that's another food, and I can have it or I can not have it. I can take it or leave it. The more that you restrict it and make it something that's reserved for special occasions, the more of it they're going to want to eat when they get it, because they don't know if they're going to get it again. So just something to consider. Okay.
This is Anna. Can I jump in real quick? Or are you running out of time?
No. You're
not to. So I let my kids choose what they want to eat for breakfast and for lunch, and then for they get treats, stuff like dinner, in order to get dessert. I don't know if it's like just my kids, but like they would only eat bread and cheese and sugar. And I'm sure like if I just gave them free choice, like they would just eat the candy. Like I feel like I have a responsibility to like make sure that they're eating healthy. One of them had an iron deficiency, and so I had a lot of talk with like the pediatrician about making sure she has more meat and more protein in her diet, more sources of iron. And I just like, I'm not sure that I really want to like give up that responsibility that I feel to make sure that they like eat what will like best serve their growth. At least like some things that have nutrient value.
Okay, so when you say, that's a good question. I understand your concern for sure. When you say that you let them choose their own breakfast and their own lunch, does that mean that you present food and put it on the table and say, this is what you can choose from to eat, and then they choose whether they eat it or not? Or do you literally say, go eat whatever you want in the kitchen, it's your responsibility to eat your breakfast and your lunch?
Well, they know kind of what the options are. Like we have cereal and milk, we have bread and butter, bread and peanut butter, like eggs. They kind of know like the basic options, and so they can just tell me what they want.
Okay, so I am for you providing a structure of, these are your options that are available. And within those options, your goal is to provide a range. So if you can provide 3 to 4 different types of foods at each meal, that's really good. If you're providing a protein, a carbohydrate, something sugary, a starch, you know, providing the variety at each meal teaches them that, yeah, all these things can be included. It's your job to decide which things to eat to make you feel full the longest.
Yeah,
so
but they wouldn't eat, like, they would only, for dinner, like, they would only eat the bread, you know, or they would only eat the starches. They just wouldn't, like, if I let them have dinner, like, dessert first, they would only.
That's because they don't actually trust that you're going to let them eat what they want.
Well, so Emily will often just eat, like she'll eat the bread and then she won't eat anything else. And because she doesn't eat anything else, I don't give her dessert.
Okay,
My
so
general rule is like, you don't have to eat, but like if you don't eat more than just the piece of bread for dinner, no dessert.
Okay, so then she's learning that there are certain foods that she has to eat in order to get these other foods. So
right. Yeah.
If you let her eat bread,
she gets she gets sweet stuff like other times in the day too. It's just dessert. I'm like, no, like I have to at least once a day make sure that you have some protein and some vegetables.
So I know it can be really hard to trust them, but if they learn that they have to eat certain foods to get other foods, then they stop being adventurous with trying new foods. Like they'll literally stop because they'll think, what do I have to do to get the food that mom says I can have that I actually want? And even though you're saying like she'll choose to eat this, she'll choose to eat only that for a little while, but they'll stop doing it once they realize that you're not trying to control what they're eating anymore, and they'll feel safe enough to expand and to try different things. Usually kids that are resistant to trying new foods do so because they feel pressure and stress to eat in a way that pleases the people they're eating with. Because we as adults and parents are concerned that they're not getting enough nutrients. And I would say, what's giving you the idea that your kids aren't getting enough nutrients? You mentioned the anemia, correct? Or iron deficiency, yes? Correct? I can't hear her, but I think that's what she said. So that's a real measure, and I would definitely pay attention to the recommendations that your pediatrician, if they're educated in nutrition, is making on how to improve that. But in relation to just the bread issue or just eating one thing, I would say resist the urge to reward with dessert, whether it's bread or veggies or anything. They have to learn how to trust and expand and practice those eating skills in real time without worrying that they're going to get in trouble or miss out on something. And I know it's counterintuitive. It's not how we were raised. So it can be a challenge. Does that make sense? I can't hear Anna anymore.
I'm sorry, I have to unmute myself. Anna had dropped off and now I just re-admitted her to the meeting. So she's—
Oh, okay, because I was like, oh my God, am I talking to myself? Did my internet connection go away?
Yeah, it disappears like if people are waiting or whatever at some point. So now she's connecting on her audio.
Okay, so were you guys able to hear everything though that I said?
I was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. I think that Anna's internet is struggling right now.
Okay, that's a hard question as a parent to kind of really navigate. Do you want me to wait, Emily? I can go on or I can wait.
Oh.
Sorry, you guys. I'm sorry, Susan. I did not mean to just hang up on you. I swear.
It's okay. I was like, she doesn't like what I'm saying. She's like, I'm out of here. No, I'm just kidding. Did you hear my answer?
Wait, so I was getting out of my car because I had to drive to another appointment. And then when I turned off the audio of the car, it just kicked me out of Zoom. But I have to leave now anyways, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, bye guys.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions about Anna's question or about anything I just said? I want to make sure that if that's that can be addressed, somebody else has a question. If not, I'm totally okay. Okay, so these are the things that rule my food values. I mentioned it a little bit. Hunger, pleasure, culture. For me, these are the things that we emphasize most in our house. Now we get into the actual division of responsibility by Ellyn Satter. This is what it looks like in PDF form. Okay, so this is a really easy, and I put a link to it so you can click the link if you want to, and then you can just go see it. This is basically what I'm going to talk about next. It doesn't change very much in terms of between ages, what parents are responsible for and what the child is responsible for, just so everybody knows. Okay, I gotta move, let me get this off here. There we are. Okay, here we go. Ooh, sorry. All right, from birth to 6 months old, the parent is, or not the parent, but the person feeding, whoever that is, they're responsible for the what that the kids are eating. So breast milk, formula, whatever you're feeding your child, that's what your job is. Okay, your job is not to decide how much they eat. Your job is mostly to decide what they're eating. The child is responsible for when they eat, where they eat, how much, and how fast. And because infants are usually held by their parents, or you're eating in a little thingy, it's mostly, this is just be guided by your child. You're feeding based on your baby's cues when they want to eat, whether that's fast or slow. The idea is to connect with them, play with them if you have the time and the energy and the space to do so. You don't have other children, but you are led by their cues, their fullness and their hunger. Okay. Between the ages of 17 and 15, and she gives approximate ages with these, this is where developmentally kids are starting to want independence and the chance to do a lot of things themselves. This is normal development. It's normal for them to be picky, erratic, like one thing one day, throw it on the ground the next day. This is literally your child maturing and developing in real time. This is the point where you are offering structure in the form of, you decide what your child eats. So you decide the food that you present them to eat. You decide when they eat. So you decide if it's, 8 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. You decide what the structure of meals and snacks look like in your house, when that happens, where it happens, but your kid gets to decide if they eat at all and how much they eat. And this is a really challenging one. In order for kids to develop these skills, they have to be given the opportunity to say no. They have to try eating just the bread without being pressured to eat the other stuff. They have to try eating all the food and decide, no, I don't like this, I'm too full. They have to be given the opportunity to practice so they understand how to trust their own hunger and fullness signals, how to trust, oh, I do like this, how to trust the tasting and the texture. And it starts at this point right here. And if there's any questions in the middle as I'm going through this, please don't hesitate to ask. Oh, okay, there's a little video right here.
Ellyn picked up a pizza on the way home from work. Pizza is soft and easy to chew. He and Pam have cut it into small enough pieces so the children can feed themselves. Maddie gags a little. She can breathe, so she isn't choking. She accepts a little back patting from her mother, but she can work that bit of food off the back of her tongue by herself. Daniel has good hand and mouth control and so enjoys feeding himself that he eats almost anything. Even though he's chubby, Daniel must be allowed to eat as much as he is hungry for.
Okay, so the reason that I put that video in there is because it shows kids sitting at a table, so it's a family meal. This is about the age you would start meals. And she mentioned that even though he is chubby or he's in a bigger sized body, that shouldn't determine how much food he's given or allowed to eat. And that's a really important thing. Our perception of our child's size and weight should not govern what they're allowed to eat or how much. Their hunger, their ability to gauge it and decide when they're full, their growth patterns, their energy intake, all those things, that's how they decide how much they're eating. That's what needs to be allowed to be the ruling factor in how much your kid eats. If they're hungry and they're still reaching for food, give them more food. When they stop and push it away, they're done. That's how they know how to communicate those two things. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, are there any questions about those two ages, the 0 to 6 months and the 7 to 15 months? Okay. Second scenario, we only have two. I wanted to throw this one in there before we go to the next stages. You're at a relative's house eating all together. Your child, who is 4, puts their food in their plate, which I encourage and which you've been encouraging to help them gauge how much they want to eat and learn how to eat according to their hunger, but they don't eat all the food. They turn to you during the meal and say, I'm full, I don't want any more, which is good. Your older relative says, we don't waste food in this house. You need to clean your plate before you get down. Your child looks at you hesitant, unsure what to do. What do you do?
Leave.
That's awesome. I mean,
This one. I can answer this one. This happens to us all the time.
oh, okay, great. Share.
Well, like our feeding behaviors are completely opposite of Andy's culture. And like we try to have a lot of respect for our heritage cultures. But for feeding, we just like when it's me at grandma's house, I just model like, oh, your stomach is full. Okay, just leave that there. We'll take care of it. And we try not to waste food. Like we often save the food and eat it later. So we're respecting the fact that we don't waste food in the house. But it's not necessarily my child who has to eat it. And like we'll offer them to taste something new, but they don't have to eat the whole thing if they don't like it or they don't want to taste it. So I just model it if I'm there. If I'm not there, I mean, we've really worked on grandma and auntie about how we do feeding, and they've changed a little bit, but like if I'm not there, I'm not gonna. I mean, they're probably getting different messages with grandma and auntie, and that's okay. I mean, they're bicultural children and it's not going to kill them. So
that's actually really good.
If I'm there, I just model like, oh, your body is full. Okay, well, we'll save that for later because we don't waste food or whatever, you know. But they don't have to eat it right then to not waste it.
That's true. That is a really, really good point. And that's a really good solution to this, Mary. Good job. Anybody else? Ideas? Or would you do what Mary does? Because that was an excellent example. Oh, okay. All right, 11 to 36 months. Picky, erratic, and fickle eating will start around this age and it will last for a while. So the way that you deal with this is structure. Your job as the person feeding or any of the people feeding is to lead with structure. And that basically decide what kids are going to eat at that meal. You decide if there's 3 things or 4 things or 1 thing or 5 things. That's what the structure is. You decide when the meals are and when the snacks are. If a kid is misbehaving at the table or you can remind them one time, or you can say, hey, if you're not hungry, you just need to let us know, because then you can get down from the table. But we don't play at the table, we sit and we eat. And we'd love to have you here at the table with us, talking and being a part of it. But if you're not gonna behave in a way that's respectful to us or the food, then I'm gonna ask you to get. So the goal with the meals at this time is helping them understand there is a structure, there is expected behavior at mealtime, there is fun at mealtime. Focusing on how a kid feels right now at this age is more important than the actual food that they're eating, the nutrient part, unless there is some kind of a deficiency somewhere, which you need to make sure, like the only way that you would know if there's a deficiency is if they're tested. Like when Anna mentioned the iron deficiency or anemia, like that's how I would guide deciding if my child has a nutrient deficiency. Don't assume they do because you haven't seen them eat a vegetable in 5 days. Like honestly, at this time in their life, it's really important to focus on how they're feeling when they're eating, how they're experiencing it, how they're interacting, not how much they're eating. One thing that I do think is important, which I know our relatives have done, and I had to like have conversations about it, was when a child is upset for any reason, food in our culture is often used as a placator. So like, oh, you're sad, here's some pasta. Oh, you're having a bad day, you're angry, go eat a cannoli. And I'm like, no. Like, I love all that stuff and it's good food, but you want to be hesitant to use food as a fixer for emotional things. Like, because in those moments, there's things they need instead of food. You know, maybe it's hugs, maybe it's naps, maybe it's discipline, maybe it's just your attention and your presence, you know, which can feel draining, especially with multiples. Like, no lie. Like, it is much easier to give them a Twinkie than to sit with them and give them the attention when you're like super low on energy and just so tired. I get it. If you can, resist the urge to use food as a fixer. For structured meals, the goal is 3 meals a day at times you determine, snacks at times you determine, and also being considerate of what your child likes without catering specifically to them. So that looks like, in real practice, providing 1 or 2 foods you know your kid is 100% going to eat, and then the other foods that you offer, if you're able to offer more than 1 or 2, are foods that you are wanting them to try, or that you enjoy, that are part of your family's eating patterns. Okay? Letting a kid eat in a way that works for them is something that can be frustrating for parents also, but it's super important in helping them develop fine motor skills and just in helping them develop the ability to be autonomous. You know, like a lot of times we get in the habit of telling kids and policing a lot of things that kids do because we think we know best. And when it comes to eating and food, they actually know better because they're already in tune. And so allowing them to figure out what works for them is important, and giving the space and time to do that. The only other thing on here that I think is really important is when a kid asks for something in between meals or snacks, it's important to not allow the grazing. And it's important to say, we just had a snack. If you're still hungry, then you're going to need to eat more at your next meal. This is when we're going to have our next meal, or this is when your next snack is coming. You can have some water right now, but we're not going to eat all day long. We have breakfast, we have a snack time, we have lunch, we have a snack time, or whatever your schedule is, and just communicate to them that they are expected to eat at the times that you're providing food. Otherwise, you literally will be in the kitchen all day long. Okay, 3 to 6 years old. Again, in each stage and age of development, it's about building on the previous skills. So from this age on, it's pretty much, this is how the jobs are split. Parents are responsible for most of the time what, when, and where you're eating. Child is responsible for how much they eat and if at all. Again, creating a structure, being good company, weaving your values in, letting them serve themselves becomes more important at this age, because this is how you can teach them to gauge portion sizes according to hunger. Portion sizes should never be something that a parent decides for a kid, because we don't know how hungry our kid is. We don't know how much That's basically what it is. Like, you want them to not look to you to tell them how hungry they are. You want them to be like, oh, I ran a lot today. I'm going to eat a huge meal because I'm super hungry. I used all that energy. Like, that's not the words they're going to use, but that's the amount of hunger they're going to feel. And that's how they're going to adjust how much food they eat as a result. And if I'm going too fast on these slides, please slow me down. 6 to 12 years old, again, parent is responsible for what they eat, when they eat, where they eat, how much, and whether. And this is also the age with our kids where I started including them in the preparation of food, in the growing of our food, in the choosing of meals. Like, I still provide a lot of structure and I provide meal times, but a lot of times my kids prepare a part of the meal. So like, our kids know how to make pasta from scratch because that's just a huge part of our life. And so they'll make the dough and start cutting the pasta while I'm doing other stuff. Or one of my daughters is really into like baking. So she got a book for Christmas and she's been baking things out of the book on her own without me, which, okay, I'm trying to build skills with them in this area. So this is also an age where you can introduce them to the preparation factor of food if that's something that you do a lot of. If you eat out a lot, then introduce them to the choosing of how do we decide where we're going to eat? How do we decide where we're going to spend money? How much money we're going to spend on food? Like, introducing them to all the decisions that go into how you choose what you eat is helping them also. And that's an area where you can weave your family's values and things that are important, cultural considerations, into it also.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that part, being able to, prepare and cook with them, teaching them that aspect. I'm really looking forward to that part.
It's a really, really neat experience. That for me is like some of my best memories with like my grandmother and my great grandmother, my mother still. Like, we still all get together and make raviolis and we make tortellinis and we make all the food that we really enjoy eating, how my grandmothers made them. And so our kids love that. They've really like understood the connection to our past because we've continued those things into the present. So I can't speak highly enough of like just including kids in cooking. I love it.
Karen?
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing that I did, and I know my kids they may have been closer to 18 months, but maybe not. They were definitely standing, but they were not standing for long. We made lemonade with lemons from the garden. And then we did chocolate pudding, the kind where it's just powder and then you mix milk in. And that was really fun. They love like the stirring and the squishing. And they were little. They were like toddlers. So that's something you could do to experience with kids your age.
Yeah, real basic. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Oh gosh, that's a good point, Mary. Oh yeah, like even letting them touching the food as they're, showing them wash your hands and then we touch it. This is a tomato or this is this. Like, that is part of their experience of exposing to different textures also. Like, that will also get them used to trying new things. So that's a good point. Good job, Mary.
I think earlier you mentioned like showing like where food comes from, obviously like gardening and whatnot eventually, but we've started composting.
Oh, awesome.
Earlier this year, that was like one of our 2020 goals was to compost. So eventually, maybe garden, with it, but we're at least composting. So it's okay. We're not wasting all of this food, it's going back in here. Granted, they don't know what that means right now, but yes, Nolan, you don't know what that means. But yeah, so that's we've started that for ourselves in hopes of a teaching tool for them.
That's super cool. That's a great idea. That's what you do. You just start where you are, what feels interesting and what you want to continue to cultivate, and you do it. That's super cool. The goal as children get older is to foster their trust and confidence in themselves and their own ability to know how to eat in the way that's best for them. That's really the crux of it all. Like, that right there is the most important thing. The most important thing you can do as a family is have family meals because it supports and enhances the idea of the family as a community. It provides social and emotional support, especially actually at any age. Like in the early ages, it's about helping your kid feel safe with you in eating situations. And you can build that foundation of safety and comfort and relaxation in eating at the family table. If there's no distractions, and if your kid knows they're going to get your attention 100% while they're there, that is a really, really important thing. And then as they get older, that table becomes the place where they share the harder things, or they feel like they can share the things that are more challenging that they're dealing with. That whole structure of eating together and being together is a connection period. It connects us to our history, our culture, our traditions, and at meals reassure children they will be fed. That's a really big one also, because that goes back to just the basic needs that every human has. If a kid's not sure they're going to be fed or they're going to be able to eat enough, they feel stress and they feel pressure, and then that shows up in different ways in their life. And so meals make children feel safe, and connecting with them and sitting and talking with them make them feel emotionally safe. So you're building those safety feelings in your kids at the physical level, at the emotional level, at the spiritual level, by sitting down and having a meal with them. And I'm not talking about like a meal with 5 different things. If you sit down and you have a bowl of top ramen together, and you talk with your child, and you listen to each other, and you look each other in the face, or you listen to music together and then you talk about it, that is a family meal. Whatever your family unit looks like, it's the connection, it's the eating, it's the talking, it's the building of that safety together with that unit. It teaches children to be open and like a variety of foods. It teaches them the behavior that allows them to eat with others and have it be enjoyable for all. Like I have to say that like our family table is like boisterous and loud. Like my kids are not, and I don't believe in the kids should be seen and not heard. Like that is a bunch of BS. And we were not raised in that way. Our kids talk about everything at the dinner table. Like my daughters tell us where they got hair this week. My son tells us like, you know, how many times he farted during the day. Like it is literally the most hilarious, true, sometimes disgusting, but open way of talking about things and place in our house. And it was really important that was what we created. And so that's why I have such a strong feeling about family meals. Like you have to decide what you want your kids to experience when you sit down at the table together. Like, yes, there are things that you want them to actually behave, or you want to model behaviors and all that kind of stuff, but what's the experience you want them to have? What do you want them to be able to sit down and feel at the beginning of the meal, through that meal, and when they walk away? That's what I think about. And it allows for modeling of the most important skills and values by you as the parent or the people sitting and raising them. Here's how you do it if this is not something you're doing, which I feel like most of you are doing or in the process of doing. Basically, it just involves sitting down, deciding what your structure and your snack time is going to look like, and getting the other people in your life on board with doing it. And that can be sometimes the hardest thing. Are there any questions about any of this so far? Okay. What to do next? Basically, I would say this is the order of things. Start to form and clarify your food values as a family. And that may require conversations with the other people that feed your children. What are the most important things you want them to experience? What do you want to experience? What is important to you as a family? All those things. Have conversations with whoever's feeding the kids about any changes that you'd like to make. What changes feel doable? What are most necessary? What's that going to look like in your daily life, in your real time? Because we can have lots of ideas about things we'd want to change or implement or do better. And making those changes one little step at a time in a way that's doable and reasonable and doesn't stress you the F out is how you're able to sustain it and build on it. Talk about where you may need to adjust your expectations of your kids. Is there any area that you're expecting too much, or you're expecting them to understand or do something? Where are those expectations coming from? Look at that within yourself. And then decide how you can be more trusting of them. How can you build the skills that you know are going to help them trust themselves? What does that look like for you? What actions do you need to take or do differently? Decide which step is most doable and start practicing and trusting. And then this is something that I put in here because I think that it matters. You know, any work that parents do about their own relationship with food and how you view it and what it means to you and how you view your body as a result is one of the best things that you can do for your children, 100%. These things mean you're succeeding. This is how you know this is how you know you're doing a great job with your kids. They feel good about eating, but they're not obsessed with it. Like as you get into older kids, like as you get into 12, 13, teenage years, you know you've been successful if your kids don't talk about dieting, if they're not obsessed with making themselves smaller or thinner or changing something, if they're not talking about detox teas and all those harmful diet culture. If your kids know how to distinguish diet culture from real nutrition information and wisdom because they have self-awareness, then you're succeeding. At the smaller ages, if they have a good time, they join in family meals, they're happy to eat, they eat enthusiastically, they know how to say, I'm full or I'm hungry, and can I have some more, please? If they know how to pick and choose from the food that's available based on what you provide, then that means they're understanding what their job is, which is just to eat when they're hungry and stop when they're full. If they know how to turn down food, or they know how to communicate that they do want more, or no, I don't want to try this, and in respectful ways that has been provided and modeled by you guys as the family, then that's awesome. If they're open to trying new food, and if they determine for themselves how much to eat and they stop when they're full, those are all things that mean you're succeeding and you're on your way. Okay, so here were the questions that were in the survey. Somebody said that their 9-month-old was refusing solids. So the way that you decide when your baby starts solids is by what they're able to do, not by age. So you start your solids, even if the other twin has already started it, and with multiples, this can be tricky, but they're not the same person, and you have to remember that. They're ready to start solids when they start reaching for it, when they can sit up on their own, when they start playing or showing interest in spoons or utensils, when they open their mouth for it, reach for it, try to put it in their own mouth, or try to touch different textures of foods and put them in their mouth. The goal is not to get food in their body. I know it sounds funny. The goal is to introduce them to different foods and textures and let them decide if they want to continue tasting it or trying it or eating it. Did that, for whoever asked that question, does that explain it, or would you like more conversation about it?
I think that person wasn't able to get on today.
Oh, okay.
But
well,
I think she'll probably look at the recording,
Okay.
hopefully, so.
No problem. Okay, and then somebody asked, when are kids on the eat when we eat schedule specifically for dinner? And that happens when you decide it happens. So as soon as you introduce family meals in that kind of 7 to 15 month range, which is also dependent on like your family schedule and when you guys are eating and what's doable for you, then they will start eating in the pattern that you set for them, that works for your family. So you and your family and baby kind of decide when that time is right for you, but generally speaking, it's in about the 7 to 15 month range. Is the person, Taryn, were you the person that asked that question?
Yeah, probably, and I think we've already addressed it, so that's good.
Okay, there was a question about portion sizes, and so this is what I tell everyone when it comes to portion sizes. In order for them to know how to eat the right amount for their body, they have to have practice putting different amounts of food on their own plate and then eating it to decide if that was the right amount of food. I always encourage smaller amounts to be put on their plate first, because then it's just moving away from wasting food. So I say, hey, put a little bit in, see how your tummy feels, check in with your tummy. Like, eat it, see how it feels. If you still feel like you're hungry, great, put some more on your plate. But portion sizes really comes down to your kid being able to tell if they're hungry, how hungry they are, and then practicing putting the right amount of food for that hunger level in their plate themselves. if a kid gets ridiculed or shamed or reprimanded for putting the wrong amount of food in, that can really override their ability to want to keep practicing it. Again, and I know it sounds like you guys are doing a really good job with being very self-aware of these things, but kids don't always eat with you. So the messages they get from the other people they're eating influence this part also. And, just giving them some tools about what to do in those situations. If they are somewhere where somebody encourages them, to eat everything in their plate may be helpful, or tries to control or stop what they're eating. Because trying to get kids to eat more or less of anything creates a lot of conflict in them, and then negativity around that eating experience.
I have a question, or kind of expanding on the portions. So we just had lunchtime during our little discussion here. Nora, my daughter, so she didn't want any of her peanut butter sandwich.
Okay.
Nolan ate all of his, and so I gave him a couple of hers because he seemed to want more of his meal. Okay. So and then I ate the rest because obviously I didn't get enough of my lunch. so I mean that's waste, but like how have you experienced, well, if the one sibling doesn't want it but the other does, like do you just give it to them? Do you share foods like that? Like how versus like going to get more from the kitchen or wherever?
Yes, I always did. I always just say, like, if you're still hungry, you can have your sister's food if she's done, and if she doesn't want it, are you still hungry? So I just base it off of, do you want to eat it because you're hungry, or do you want to eat it because it's right here in front of you?
Or because it's your siblings, like you want it because they have it. Yeah.
Yes, and it's really just kind of asking them yes, I have given my kids each other's food, and they still eat each other's food once they're not hungry anymore. So yeah, I think that's a totally fine thing to do.
Or I eat it. I mean,
hey. Like literally that happens, like we eat, moms or the people feeding the kids are oftentimes like the garbage disposal, because we haven't been able to make our own meals because we've been feeding somebody else. We're super hungry, and it's just what's available. It's easy, Okay. The other question was expanding palettes. Okay, so first of all, I got to tell you, this takes years and repeated exposure to different foods. Kids or actually, I don't know if it's just kids, but I know for sure research shows kids need between 10 and 20 exposures to a new food before they consider even liking or disliking it. And sometimes it takes up to 30 or 40. So they have to be exposed to a food multiple times before it even crosses their radar of, oh yeah, I do like this, or I do like this texture, or maybe I'd want to eat a little bit more of that. Oh, maybe I want to eat it and actually swallow it and not just spit it out. So you're not doing it wrong. They're not like a sucky person if they were like, I don't want this. Don't try to give me broccoli 5 days in a row. Like it may take 20 days in a row, and then they decide, oh, I'll try it. And how you offer the food matters. Offering with pressure, with bribes, with manipulation, with games, with any intent other than a neutral intent for them to actually decide for themselves can feel like pressure for kids. Adjust your expectations, but keep the structure, meaning keep your meals, keep your snacks, keep your job of providing what you want them to eat or try, and then allow them the space to say yes, no, or maybe. Somebody had a question about getting in more nutrients, and my question is always, what leads you to believe that they're not getting enough? Like, do you have actual, just proof that they're not? Because sometimes we think they're not, but they are. Having meals that have a combination of protein, fat, and carbs are meals that are providing nutrients and will keep them full, which is what we want. And keep in mind that fruits and veggies are not magic bullets. They're a part of a meal sometimes, like every other food. I totally wanted to play, just because of pressure, I love Queen, so I was gonna be like, under pressure, but then I have to go to YouTube. So still working on adding songs into my presentations. But just to kind of be clear, because we talked about this, these are all the different ways that pressure can manifest in food and feeding behaviors. You may think that you're doing something and your kid is not going to feel pressure because it's in a game, because you're rewarding, but this is actually pressure. And the way that I listed it, it moves from positive reinforcement pressure to the most negative or the most harmful. All of it is something that you want to try to avoid. Okay. Any questions about any of this? This is pretty much the end right here. This is recommended reading and further resources. I listed all of Ellyn Satter's resources. She has DVDs, she has books, she has booklets. These are some social media sites that I can recommend, specifically related to kids' nutrition that is in line with the Ellyn Satter way of teaching. So the division of responsibility. Oh, and then thank you for listening and being here. And that's the end. That was a little bit longer than I was thinking, but yeah.
Well, thank you, Luciana.
You are welcome. Is there any questions or any further conversation about anything that we covered that I could do to be helpful?
No, I think my next steps are going to be, I'm going to work on Andy's like attitude and feeding behaviors, because I think he needs a refresher on some of this stuff. And then maybe because we're all home all the time now, maybe having the kids help with the cooking more. I feel like we're cooking all the time. We're cooking
feel that way
every
too.
meal. And my husband's getting tired. He's been in charge of like the pandemic shopping, because I get kind of stressed out about like big shopping trips. So I think he could use a break. And then one of my children is like really big on control. So I think that if he was planning the meal, he'd be really great at it. And then he'd know, he wouldn't have to have a fit about what dinner was about, because he'd cook it.
That's actually a good insight, Mary. Yeah, like giving kids more control over, the cooking of the meals, or like just determining what you're eating will help him have a more positive experience around that. That's good. That's good awareness of your children. And just because something is not working or working right now, always keep in mind that it's a fluid situation. Like it's constantly changing, it's constantly evolving. You as a parent are constantly evolving. Your own thoughts about food and feeding yourself and experiencing, eating are changing also. And so it's all kind of melding and sifting and sorting together as you move through it. You guys all, from your questions, sound extremely aware, which is really good, because awareness is like the key to it all. And you're trying to build that in yourselves and in your children, which I think is great. That's how people become empowered and ready to like rock on from their values, not somebody's values that they're telling them they have to have, so that's cool.
If anything, I think my current issue is I might be like too aware of it. Like I'm afraid, am I thinking too much? Like, between the two of them, am I overfeeding one, not feeding one enough? Just so aware that, is it too much? Am I kind of the opposite? Yeah.
Oh, well, that's good. So maybe just taking a step back and focusing more on the employment factor.
Yeah.
Which you have to also remember, like the stage of parenting and like kids that you're in, you're used to being super hyper aware, thinking 15 steps ahead, like if this happens, I do this. If this happens, I do this. Like that's also kind of a stage of life and parenting that you're in. So it's not a bad thing, but giving yourself, maybe using mealtime as the opportunity to relax, to take a step back from that intense, like paying attention to what they're doing and how much they're eating and all that. That might be good practice and just rest for you as the person there,
Yeah. And like I mentioned, the unplugging from the devices and actually doing the enjoyment of this is a meal and we're enjoying our food. Just that focus.
Yeah, and that's really good self-awareness. I mean, that's an actual skill that I have people practice, like adults trying to work on, building their nutrition skills. Like that's a real thing. Like putting all devices out of the room and just sitting and making your meal last 20 minutes. Like that's another thing. Like how long do your meals last? A meal that's 5 to 10 minutes is not a meal. Like you don't have enough time to relax, but is it 20 minutes? Is it 25 minutes? Like those kind of things definitely might help with what you're talking about specifically.
Yep.
But you guys are all doing a good job. I gotta tell you, you're all doing good. It's a constantly changing process, and you're doing the best you can. And again, take everything as a buffet. Take what resonates.
You want to say hi?
It's so cute.
This is Nora.
Oh,
Say hi, Nora.
oh
Yeah.
man, the
Can you
cheeks. I
say
love
hi?
the cheeks.
Hi,
Yeah.
Nora.
Say
Hi, Nora.
Oh, I love it.
Very curious about what's going on up here. Who mom's talking to? Huh?
Totally natural, of course.
Yeah. All right.
I wish I had food. We would give you food. I wish this would have been an in-person seminar. I love those because we eat.
Yeah, that'd be fun to do.
Oh, it's awesome.
Post-COVID restrictions, obviously.
Right, yeah, this definitely changes, but good things and challenging things kind of go hand in hand. So
Yeah. No, this is really good. I'm glad Emily got connected back with you. I know I think she had to step away, but I enjoyed it personally, and so hopefully the recording
yes, I hope
stuck, and we can share it with our group because I know there's other moms that will definitely get some benefit out of everything that we discussed.
Oh, good. Yeah, and again, I always want to reinforce, like, I'm one person. Like, connect with as many people on this subject that you resonate with according to the values that your family holds and what you believe eating and feeding should be like. I mean, for me, this is what I believe in, and so this is how I teach it. But there's a lot out there, so definitely keep learning, keep being open to new things, and doing what feels right and true for your family and the experiences you want them to have around food, for sure.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. Does Emily, is she here? Like, did she go?
She said in the chat she had to step away to feed, but she left herself in the meeting so that the recording wouldn't get messed up.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so I don't know how to stop. She's the only one that can stop the recording.
I assume so. Yeah.
Okay, so well, if we end the meeting, though, I'm guessing it'll just stop recording. Is that true, Mary?
Yeah, if we have to, we can just cut it shorter. But yeah,
Okay.
we'll just end the meeting and it'll be fine.
Okay. Well, it was good to see all of you. Nice to meet you,
Yeah,
Taryn.
good to see you again.
Keep doing it. Nice to see you, Mary.
Yeah. Okay,
All right.
bye-bye.
Bye. Goodbye,
See
Nora.
ya. Bye, Nora. Aw.
Thank you again, Luciana. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Bye.